How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the show. I'm joined, as usual, by Michael, and we're going to do a sort of genre that we haven't dove into on this channel yet. We're going to rank the albums of Mr. Kanye West from worst to best. 9 studio projects. We're excluding Cruel Summer, Kids See Ghosts, Watch the Throne. There's probably one that I'm forgetting. I can't remember, but he teams up with other people and does studio albums, which you could loosely count as his, but we were counting just the 9 Kanye West solo studio albums from worst to best. So, Michael, there's no time like the present. You want to lead it off?
Yeah, so I went number 9 with his most recent record, 2019, Jesus is King, which is generally just kind of an overly heavy-handed concept album about how much he believes in God and how much he loves God. The instrumentation is super interesting on it. The Chick-fil-A line is horrible. I'll let you expand on that more. And really the only parts I care about it that stuck out to me were the endings of the last 2 songs, very jazzy. I like that quite a bit. But outside of that, there's nothing I liked about this album. It seemed like it was the same song over and over and over again. We get it, Kanye. You like God. You've been telling us since day one.
He's had how many songs that could have been on this album over the years that weren't that good? Like, and then this one is just a whole, yeah, okay, well, before I get into it, my number 9 is also 2019's Jesus is King, weird album art or lack thereof. He's done that twice now with Yeezus with the CD and then this one with the blue vinyl disc. I guess That is the official album art. So every hour is a pretty cool opener, gets you pumped for the gospel vibe. But notably, it's one of the better songs on the album, and it literally doesn't have Kanye on it at all.
Yeah.
So I'm like, well, hard to put that as a point in this album's favor since it is a Kanye West album. Salah is a cool song that feels like an epic opener, and then it just ends, and there's no song after it. And by the way, speaking of Salah, I wanted to Salah is a 2-minute, 45-second song that has 13 writers and 6 producers. What the fuck?
Why is it? No.
Why?
No.
I don't. It's so ridiculous to me. Look, it feels like Kanye wants to make a gospel album, but either doesn't have the skill and or just can't do it because he feels like he's a rapper. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you get the worst of both worlds on this short as hell project. I mean, what can you even say? That Kenny G feature is cool. Again, it's not Kanye. The best parts of this album are where he is absent. So it's super easy, number 9 for me. It's just a totally half-assed project.
No, I really couldn't stand this thing. It reminds me a lot of the when Bob Dylan tried to make a Christian record, and it was also equally as terrible in his discography.
And I didn't talk about the Chick-fil-A line.
Yeah, go ahead, expand on that.
Literally his worst lyric in the history. I mean, I got to remember so I say it because it's so bad. It's let's see, closed on Sunday, you're my Chick-fil-A, number 1 with the lemonade. That's the fucking bar.
Yeah, I mean, maybe just retire. Maybe after that, you just want to stick to shoes, Kanye.
It's a bar so bad, it makes me question whether or not he actually can write at all, even though there's several of his records I enjoy. I was like, is he just getting lucky? Because that's such a bad lyric. It makes me question whether he is a capable artist at all. That's how bad it was. So I'll quit talking about Jesus is King. Super disappointing, too.
Right.
New Kanye projects are not that frequent. So when one comes out, you're like, cool. And you listen to it, you're like, that's
and
it.
The fact that it's so short, you think, okay, it's going to be tight, condensed. It's going to be really lean. It's going to have only the best stuff on there. And it's weak. It's just a weak record.
Don't even bother. No. I mean, there's nothing on it that redeems it.
Really, I'm only buying this as a Kanye completionist and not for any other reason. I'm not going to spin it because I like it. I'm buying it because I want all the Kanye records because I like Kanye quite a bit.
Yeah.
All right, my number 7 or my number 8, I'm sorry, I switched at the very last second, is Yeezus, which feels like Baby's first attempt at industrial hip hop. And at the time when it came out, 2013, Death Grips was really starting to blow up. Clipping first came onto the scene. Industrial hip hop was kind of really starting to hit, some sort of stride to really find its way in the mainstream or the mainstream of hip hop. And it just seems like Kanye's trying to do something he's not capable of doing. I didn't find any of the verses particularly interesting. I found that it was overproduced at times. I like Black Skinhead. I think that was probably the standout track of the album. But the rest of it just kind of goes together, and I felt like other people do this type of music so much better. I'm not going to bother with coming back to Yeezus, especially because there's other better Kanye projects out there. This is not something I'm going to often.
A fair pick. I debated putting that in this spot, but ultimately I have to give my number 8 to The Life of Pablo from 2016. I don't find that I have a whole lot to say about this one, to be honest. I heard it a few times and I revisited it again to make this list, and it's just kind of a non-starter for me. I think it's just kind of a half-ass attempt at throwing in some experimental sounds, like here and there, like peppered throughout, almost as an afterthought. They don't feel like they're part of the artistic attempt at all. Feedback is a song I was surprised to find a lot of people cite as being him being cold and having a great verse. I'm like, this is as lame and as predictable as I've ever heard Kanye on that song. I don't understand why people like that. And then you get hit with no More Parties in LA, and Kendrick comes in and kills it. Right. And it just makes me wish I was listening to a better album because it's basically a Kendrick featuring Kanye song, not the other way around.
It feels that way at times.
Yeah. And I just makes me want to go listen to a better rapper like Kendrick on a better record. I guess you could have Ultralight Beam as kind of an interesting, unique sounding thematic opener, but the rest of the album just becomes very quickly very boring and generic and not a whole lot that sticks with you, given that Kanye is known to experiment with sounds and try new sounds. I don't think like he did on this album. I think it's just kind of I got to put something out, so I'll put something out.
Right.
Easy number 8 for me, Life of Pablo.
So my number 7 was the quick flip. I went with Ye. I listened to it for the final time before, doing this list. And I decided that I like the stripped down nature of it at times. I like the takes on mental health he has, especially on Yikes. I think Ghost Town is one of the more beautiful tracks he's ever made. I find it to be epic and layered really well, and I like the verses. And I found that it's everything that Jesus is King was not. It was very lean. It was very concise. It was tight. There wasn't really a track on there where I go, this isn't great. Since there are so few tracks, there aren't a lot of tracks I go, this is special. But I like the album as a whole. I think it's a quality record, a quality output, and I like the idea of a very quick, short hip-hop record, because I think, as you'll find as my list goes on, I find Kanye projects start out super strong and really, really good and kind of teeter out by the end. So this kind of concept to me, it makes sense in the history of his discography. Ye is my number 7, and it's a good number 7. It's not a weak 7 at all. This is at the point where I go, these albums are mostly decent and solid, and I would give them a good rating.
And I think actually its brevity works with its concept in a way. It's kind of manic, unfocused, intentionally so concept. So my number 7 is Yeezus from 2013. Again, relatively easy to put this towards the back of the pack. But I actually don't mind this record in and of itself. I don't claim that it's a particularly great attempt at an industrial hip-hop album. You said it all there. Clipping was making this sound big. Death Grips was pushing this sound. And Kanye just kind of slipped in, riding the coattails of something somebody else had innovated. But I don't think he does it terribly. Black Skinhead, cool track. Although we can't talk about Black Skinhead without mentioning the lyric, I'm keeping it 300 like the Romans.
Yeah.
Whoops. Yeah. Come on, man. It's amazing that made it through how many years to the record. Like Rick Rubin.
Hip hop producers. You think
Rick Rubin was involved on this?
Yeah, but Rick Rubin might not be that great of a historian.
I guess.
He dropped out of NYU.
Yeah, well. So On Sight starts this album off super, super strong. It's kind of a trend, as you said, with Kanye records. Super great opening couple tracks or track. Crazy experimental electronic sounds. Really, really cool. This is probably as good as he ever did industrial hip hop. The anger and energy that Kanye displays here was really refreshing to me, because you don't hear that in a lot of other spots on his discography. You generally think of him as kind of funny, kind of egotistical, sometimes self-aware, sometimes painfully not self-aware. Yeah. But you never think of him as like an angry, kind of almost Death Grip sounding type. And he does that okay when he sets his mind to it. Not great, but okay, pretty good. But then you got I Am a God, New Slaves, Hold My Liquor. These songs completely slow my enjoyment of this record down to a crawl. And by the end, I'm like, oh, thank God it's over. I mean, that's why it's so low. I don't hate it because the aesthetic is cool, even though he's not the first to do that sound. Right. But it's just not that strong of a cohesive project. Pretty easy to put that towards the back of the pack. Number 7 for me, Yeezus.
My number 6 was The Life of Pablo. I felt like it was a very stripped back project. I felt like it was a very human project. This was around the time when he was first becoming a dad. He married Kim Kardashian. I like No More Parties in LA. I think it's a decent track. Like I think the Kendrick feature goes a long way in that. I don't think Kanye's terrible. I think it's he always has these takes on fame in a lot of his albums, and this is the best version of that in this song. I also like Famous and his gritty line against Taylor Swift, which I think is hilarious. The song that sticks out to me as terrible is Wolves. It's so heavy-handed about like finding Mary and Joseph, and it's odd. He keeps calling himself Joseph, and he keeps calling Kim Kardashian Mary, when she is not a virgin at all. The internet knows that. We all know that. And I don't know. It's a little bit bloated. It's kind of long for my taste, but I don't think it's a bad record. I still think he's got good verses in points in this, but I wish there was less of it. And I think the ending is actually better than the beginning in this one. I think the final 4 or 5 tracks in there, post Wolves, are also really, really strong.
Really?
And the beginning of it, I'm just kind of like, yeah, that's okay.
It doesn't feel like it introduces a whole lot of new ideas.
That's also fair. It does have some trap sounds in it, though, which I like. It goes a little bit with the trends. It kind of follows the trends. And he doesn't trap. He does trap better than he does industrial. I will give him that.
Yeah, I don't think he's terrible at either, but he's definitely not. He wouldn't have rose to fame on his ability to explore those sounds. He's not that good at it. So my number 6, and from here on out, we're into records that I would regularly revisit and genuinely enjoy. No qualifications needed. Number 6 for me is 808s and Heartbreak from 2008. I was skeptical of this one because my prevailing memory was, oh God, the auto-tune. Yeah. I'm going to drown in the fucking auto-tune because I hadn't heard this record in years. But I went back and listened to it and I was like, you know what? It really is not that bad at all. It's very interesting. It's not a hip-hop album. There's scarcely a hip-hop verse to be heard on this thing. It's basically a vaguely experimental electro-pop album. Something that you would not expect a rapper of Kanye's caliber to come out with. So I commend him for the creative risk. That line about his friend's daughter getting a report card and all he has to talk about is a new sports car. I actually thought
I like that a lot.
I thought it was a really cool way to illustrate. And then he goes on to say something about, what was it? Not having anyone to take to a friend's wedding or something like that. I was like, that's pretty cool. I can see people saying, well, that's just, a poor rich boy. Right. I'm like, but it feels honest. He's risen to the top and he's found that it's kind of lonely up there.
Yeah, it's the price of fame. It's a very, it happens constantly over his records. The price of fame is a theme across Kanye's discography. And that's one of the best illustrations of it.
Yeah. And that's, say you will, very minimalist production, very cool production. The string arrangements I found very pleasant and lush all across this thing, not tinny and fake like you'll so often hear them on alternative genres who are just trying to get the string sound cheap. Doesn't really affect it here. I think it's really good. You can see that the Kid Cudi influence on this thing is strong, even though he doesn't appear on every track. You know what I mean? He's present. I think he's a producer on a couple of these cuts, and he was definitely involved in the process. And his kind of dreary electro pop auto crooning would go on to be like the sound of hip hop of that little era. You know what I mean? So he's ahead of the game here as well. Streetlights and Paranoid are full-blown electro pop tunes, and they work. Yeah. I like it. I really do like it. If this was some other artist besides Kanye who came out with this thing, I think people would pretty universally say it's a really cool, refreshing new sound. Although RoboCop sucks. But
RoboCop sucks. That's on there. RoboCop is a weak point.
Yeah.
Written down in my notes.
Other than that, cool album. So 808s and Heartbreak.
All right, we are at the point now. My top 5 I consider to be all very landmark records. I consider these to be all excellent ranking, on all the magazines and rollings. These are all worthy of that. And that being said, number 5 for me is the sophomore effort. It's Late Registration. It feels like, honestly, just a little bit more of an extension of the College Dropout. It doesn't feel like it does anything particularly new, but he still does a lot of really nice things in there. I love Touch the Sky. I really heard him say the fact that he samples Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, I think is hilarious and should absolutely not work, and it totally does. I find that I'm in such a minority. I'm the only person I've ever met that does not care for Gold Digger.
Really?
I don't care for it. I can't do it. I don't know why I don't like that song. I wish I liked that song because everybody else likes it, but Gold Digger is just not for me. I don't care for it. I really like Diamonds of Sierra Leone with Jay-Z. I think it's the superior Jay-Z feature compared to Never Let Me Down, which is on The College Dropout, I think, is way better than that. And the James Bond sample. And like they talk about blood diamond and stuff like that, where diamonds really come from and how it's unethically sourced, that kind of thing. We Major with the horns. It's a very epic feeling track. I really like it. I mean, this is not a sophomore slump. And even though it's number 5, it is still an excellent record. I just think there are 4 better than it. But I really think Late Registration is an excellent, excellent record. And I love the samples on most of these tracks.
So we'll continue talking about this. My number 5 is also Late Registration from 2005, his follow-up. And it was a bit of a statement, just the fact that this record was quality, because I didn't know this about Kanye. I am a slight fan going into this but I was reading about these, as I often do, as I listen to them. And he was a producer first and foremost, and people didn't really want to give him a shot as a solo artist, right? So the College Dropout drops, and everybody's like, wow, that's really good. Maybe he's a one-hit wonder, though. He's had all this time to formulate that one. But then this one is right on the heels of it, like less than 12 months? Yeah. 14 months, something like that. Just as solid, just as good. Definitely cemented his reputation and allowed him to become what he became. Definite step up in terms of production. There's some acoustic instrumentation to be found on this, as with the debut. Very welcome. Produced by John Bryan, who was a name that I know just because he's like a film score kind of guy.
Really?
Yeah. And I was surprised. Those two worlds didn't collide in my mind until I read that. I was like, is that the same John Bryan who does like film scores and mixing for movies and stuff? Yeah, apparently it is. So interesting that he would do that, but he does a great job. Obviously, Kanye always has his hand in production,
of course,
as well.
He's such a great producer.
He is. He really is. And that Adam Levine feature, I guess, was pretty brave at the time for a rapper to do. Very unhip, but it really works. Drive Slow is really a weird bit that I feel like the mastering is fucked up on this song. I'm hearing it, and all of a sudden something will come in like a kick pattern or like somebody's verse or something. I'm just like, whoa, gee, why the fuck is that so loud? I don't know if that's an issue with the original mix. I mean, it could be, right, but I think it's a mastering issue, actually. Crack Music is good. Roses is an extremely subtle, intelligent.
I like it a lot. I agree with that completely.
That's a great tune. One that I had totally forgotten about, but yeah, that's great. He seems more confident lyrically this time around than the debut. Hey Mama was one you didn't mention. Very Kanye at his most relatable, at his most human.
Shouting out to his mother, because as you'll see, I mean, his mother, really influenced a lot of his early stuff, especially. Mm-hmm. He really talks about his mother a lot in his first 4 or 5 albums.
I will, on a final note, I will say that the skits are not nearly as successful for me this time around. They feel like they don't need to be here, whereas on the debut, I actually enjoyed them a lot.
I do like Broke Fibro. I'm in on that shit. I get it. Because I'm broke as shit. I get that. As a poor person, I understand that, and I can relate so much to it. I get it. But I agree. The skits are not nearly as good as the first record.
I don't feel like they add what they added on.
No, they don't. The first record skits are excellent.
And I actually like Gold Digger. I find it so hard to hate. Overplay is a factor. It's been played to death, but you can't hate that song. I'm so surprised.
It's just not for me. I don't get it. I don't get why I don't like it. It just hits my ear wrong.
Oh, fair enough. So yeah, number 5 for me as well, right in the middle. Definitely from here on up, really good projects.
All right, so my number 4 is 808s and Heartbreak. In my mind, this is, we talked about Radiohead last week. This is his Kid A. This is the College Dropout trilogy is over, and he's like, you know what? I'm just gonna make a fucking R&B record, and I'm not gonna rap. I'm just gonna sing the whole goddamn time.
Yeah,
and he does it successfully. I mean, he really brings auto-tune into the mainstream out post T-Pain, and I like the beginning track. It's about Say You Will is a slow burner with like a really subtle like metronome ding dong kind of loop, and it bleeds right into Welcome to Heartbreak. I like the layering of that, and it talks about his past life and his old friends, and where their lives are at compared to his, even though he's really rich and successful. You have Heartless, which is the first ever introduction I had to Kanye West. It's the first Kanye West song I ever heard.
It's a good one.
And it's the lead track for a reason. I read it's the 3rd most successful track he's ever had. I would say Paranoid is an excellent track. I really like that one. His Young Jeezy RoboCop, like we said, also sucks.
Yeah.
Love Lockdown's really good, and I'd say some of the later tracks are a little bit weaker. I don't really care for them, but then The Coldest Winter, it comes back and it ends really well. And I also would say I like the Young Jeezy feature God, I can't remember the track that it's on, but Young Jeezy, man, it's like they're like running. They're like run. Oh, it's amazing.
Yeah.
On Amazing, the Young Jeezy feature, they're like running backs. Okay, so you have Kanye, who's the speed back, okay, he's the guy who gets all the yards, and then Young Jeezy is the power back, and he punches it in for the touchdown. That's what amazing feels like. And Young Jeezy and Kanye did a lot of stuff at this point. They did put on too, and I don't know why they don't do stuff anymore together. Good, but they work together really well. Their voices contrast excellently, and they're both put really good verses on each other's songs. I quite like it.
This is a good point to mention that with a few glaring exceptions, notably, we'll get to a few of them that I haven't mentioned yet. But he manages features extremely well on his projects. He pulls from a lot of different people and doesn't wear out. They don't wear their welcome out by using them too much. He uses them as a complement to what he's trying to achieve rather than leaning on them. Which is the appropriate way to use features.
And I also want to mention this album was, of course, right after his breakup with his longtime girlfriend, Alexis Pfeiffer, and right after his mother died. And that's what Cold Winter is about. It's like a kind of a goodbye to both the most important women in his life at that point. At the same time, it's a very emotional record. And honestly, it seems like it's influenced a lot of stuff now. Like, it sounds like a Drake record. It sounds like a Frank Ocean record. It sounds like people hated this when it came out. But in reality, it was ahead of its time, shockingly ahead of its time.
It was prescient because that auto croon style, like there's artists now still coming up that lean on that style. And I don't want to say empirically that was the first, but it was the first that I know of to sort of lean into that. But yeah, no, totally agree there. Solid record. And the genuine emotion from the loss comes through in a way I didn't expect it to going back and listening to it. So number 4 for me, this is probably going to be the biggest difference between us, is Ye from 2018. I seldom criticize a record for being too short because if it leaves you wanting more, I would say that's a mark in its favor.
Right.
And this one does, but it's too short. It's 23 minutes. That's it. I mean, it's unbelievable how short it is. There are Pink Floyd songs longer than this record.
Yes,
I've had cups of coffee that have taken me longer to finish than this record. Yeah, I mean, all the time I'll say a record's too long, but this one is empirically too short. So that's a mark against it. That's why it doesn't rise further. I thought about Killing You starts this record off dark, surreal, sort of weird production, minimalist, and yet sort of just odd in its samples and its sounds that it uses.
The majority of this record feels very minimal.
Yeah. I can't divorce my love for this record with my love of Kids See Ghosts, which was produced this same year out in like wherever he was in Wyoming, in Jackson, Wyoming or something. Those Wyoming sessions were super productive because you had this one, which is great. Well, we'll say this one is good. Kids See Ghosts is great. That's so linked to this. It's like the same group of sessions. And I think that's obviously the superior record. But then he also, Pusha T's Daytona was produced out there. Great record as well. 2018 was a hell of a year for Kanye. So minimalist style, the hard tonal shifts when like sometimes a trap instrumental will sneak its way in, odd and seamless from like, the back of your mind all of a sudden, like that glitzy, I forget the tune. It's like, maybe it might be Yikes actually. And then like all of a sudden you're like, oh, in the club, something, all this song. I'm like, oh, that's really clever the way you did that to illustrate the bipolar concept he outlines on the cover art. So it's so cohesive, this album, and so short, it almost feels like a single epic track to me.
Right.
And if it's one track, I love it. It's great. I mean, it's really, really cool. No Mistakes, Ghost Town, awesome vocals. I don't know the name of the female artist who appears on Ghost Town, but like what a impact!
Amazing.
What an impactful free, and that's another great moment. It's like the vocals are so interesting all across this project.
At the end of Yikes when he goes bipolar is my superpower and he goes,
Yeah,
I love that. I love that.
It's a really cool album. I wish it was twice as long. I wish it was 3 times as long. I wish it delved deeper into this weird style. And I don't know. I think it was so close to being an epic project, but it just stopped short of the finish line lengthwise. So I like it. I can understand why people would put it lower, but I put it at number 4.
All right. My number 3 is the debut, College Dropout, which is one of the all-time great hip-hop debuts. It goes without saying. The first 7 tracks, including, the short intro, it's maybe the cleanest first 7 tracks I have ever heard in my entire life. Everything up through Jesus Walks is ridiculous. I mean, All Falls Down is amazing. Jesus Walks with the choir and the military feeling beat and the message of a man just going about his faith. It's amazing. And then there's something so innocent about the opening track that it escapes me what it's called right now. But the opening track is, about selling drugs, and we weren't supposed to make it past 25.
Yeah.
I love that track. It's the kids, in the background. It's an amazing opening, and then All Falls Down. I love the raspiness of the female singer's voice in it. It's such an amazing first 7 tracks. The next couple, the Jay-Z feature, they're okay. And then it gets to New Workout Plan, which is one of the biggest bummers out there. It's such bling air of bullshit. I hate it. I can't stand that fucking track.
Yeah.
That one and Breathe In, Breathe Out with Ludacris are both horrible. I can't stand them. They bum me the fuck out, and I can't handle it. By the way, that song I was thinking of was We Don't Care.
I couldn't think of it either. Yeah.
And then the skits, as we mentioned, were great. I really love my dad has degrees. He's not a rich man, but he has all his degrees. And he left me no money, but he left me degrees.
Yeah.
I love it because it questions, is college really worth it? All this stupid bullshit and all this fucking money? Is it? Or is it just a piece of paper? I mean, Kanye West is worth $6 billion at this point. And he never went. He's a college dropout, as the album would state. I would also say that the ending tracks it's very top heavy. It's generally a very top heavy record, and it kind of bums me out because I wish there were better parts of it. But even with its top heaviness, it's still a landmark record. It's an amazing record, even for the first 7 tracks, even for the couple of Jay-Z features, even for a couple of the tracks at the end, which escape me right now. It's a very, very strong piece of music, and I love it.
So we'll get to my opinions on that in a moment, because I have a bit more to say. But my number 3 is My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy from 2010.
Okay.
Perhaps, well, I don't know, slightly controversial, not to say this is his best record. I know a lot of people, I'm guessing it'll probably be your number 1. A lot of people have this as their number 1, and I can see why. Great record, no doubt about it. I just happen to think he has 2 stronger projects. Tough to talk about this record just because of the sheer amount of opinions that have been given on it. It has been debated to death. Infamously, Mr. Fantano gave it a 6, was it?
Yes. And then the Redux gave it a light 6 again.
So, and everybody that's infamous on that channel. No, I mean, look, it's a great, I actually tend to agree with the criticism I think he gave, which is that it starts really strong and it just kind of slowly plateaus and then tails off. That generally speaking, I tend to agree with that. So Gorgeous, what a way to start. Starts it off with a bang, really, really strong, powerful verse. How about some guitar solos on a Kanye West album? Who would have, it's just people, I forgot that was on there. And I was like, oh yeah, that's right. There's some guitar noodling on this as well. And then next track, Power. Love the King Crimson sample, big King Crimson fan.
21st century schizoid man.
I think he uses that in a really creative way and transforms it, which is what you want to do if you're sampling well. Don't just lean on somebody else's art. All of the Light has some really beautiful strings on it. I don't know why on that song the drums are mixed so goddamn loud, but there's this one sort of, it's supposed to be an accompanying drum riff, and it just blows the shit out of my ears every time. I don't know why. The mix is terrible on that song. I don't know if that's just if that's just me hearing it wrong.
I mean, the drums are definitely noticeably hot.
It's so weird. It stood out to me like a mile away that this album had like 1 million producers, and nobody thought to fix that. Anyway, I will say, super interesting and engaging production throughout. The lyrics, there's some misses for me, but the lyrics by and large are interesting and engaging. It's conceptual. It stays focused to what it's talking about, even when it explores other concepts, which I appreciate. That Donald Trump reference on So Appalled has taken on a different meaning in light of the last few years. So look, I will say though, AV Club, Consequence of Sound, Billboard Genius, GQ, Pitchfork, Rolling Stone, all of this named this their album of the decade. And I'm like, boys, come on, easy now. It's not even Kanye's best of the decade, let alone the best of the decade. I think that's way too high to rate it, even though I do genuinely enjoy it. I think it's a great record. So I don't know. There's some mixing issues. There's some glaring production issues. Another one was Devil in a New Dress. I forget whose verse it is, but like 3/4 of the way.
Rick Ross.
Yeah. And I'm like, why is he so loud? It's just way too loud. So anyway, that's my number 3. A record I like a lot, and I think it's a great record, but not his best and not the best of the decade.
So my number 2 is Graduation, the final of the College Dropout trilogy. It's the first one with Mike Dean as a producer, not just as a mixer. And to me, the scope just feels so much bigger than the first 2 records. It feels like an expensively produced record. And it opens up with Good Morning, which makes me feel like I'm waking up hungover and need to go fuck up somebody's day.
Good morning.
That's how it's a great start. And the little like woo in the background, I love that. But it's Kanye in my mind. Feel like he's finally like immortalized himself. He's arrived. That's what that song really feels like. Stronger is an amazing track. It's one of his first real forays in like a techno sound with Daft Punk, the Daft Punk sample. Can't Tell Me Nothing is an absolute bop with the slow build. Wait till I get my money right, and then I love it. It's kind of a slow build. Every time that chorus hits, it's a slow build, and then the next verse punches, and then it slowly builds back up, and it reloads, and it punches again. That's a great track. Flashing Lights, which is one of the most famous tracks on here, is an amazing track about, the difficulties of having a relationship with somebody while being famous, the paparazzi harassing you. I mean, there are shitty tracks on here. Barry Bonds has some pretty weak lyrics, but at the same time, I like the jazzy beats behind it. I really enjoyed it. It's very reminiscent of College Dropout. Drunken Hot Girls is probably the worst track on this record. I really can't stand it. It's like I said in late registration, is bling era bullshit.
It is.
It's not great. That and it's I just don't care for it. And then Homecoming with the Chris Martin feature should not work as well as it does, but it does, and it's the love letter to Chicago. It's love letter to Chicago. I love it. And then finally you have Big Brother, which I like because it's how he came up. It's how Jay-Z took him under his wing and their relationship. It might not be the same as it used to be now, but it shows you how much Jay-Z meant to what Kanye has become. So I would say Graduation is definitely my favorite early Kanye piece.
So we'll keep talking about that. My number 2 is Graduation from 2007, and it really competes for number 1. I would say, even though I think that my number 1, which Process of Elimination, we know what that is now, but my number 1, I think, is the stronger project. Graduation, I would probably say, is my favorite Kanye project. Production is fantastic. It's tight. It's focused. There's not a wasted moment. Everything sounds great. Good Morning, Champion, Stronger. And there one, is it Good? I can't remember the name. And there's one that I'm forgetting. And then Can't Tell Me Nothing. It's like the first 5 tracks, all bangers right off the bat. Unbelievably strong. I'm so excited when it's like one after another. I'm like, oh yeah. It's so good, man. Okay, I'll concede Barry Bonds hasn't really aged that well. It wasn't that strong. And Drunken Hot Girls was garbage then, and it's garbage now.
Shit. Clearly
the worst cut off the record. You take that off, take Drunken Hot Girls off, I think it's my number 1. But that song is terrible. So earlier I said I wanted to discuss a few of the features that miss for me. A lot of them appear on my number 2 and my number 1, sadly. Get Lil Wayne off this fucking project.
Yeah.
He is garbage, dude. I don't understand how he has had a career as long and successful as he has. Anyway,
his verses they're very of their time. They're very dated. I mean, they felt dated when they came out back in that era. I don't think Lil Wayne has ever made anything super interesting or revolutionary. Kanye is consistently doing it, and is like, hey, Wayne, you want to do something? And Wayne goes in and spits and throws up all over whatever the hell he just made. And he's like, all right, I'm done.
So one you didn't mention is another personal favorite of mine. Everything I'm Not, maybe Everything I Am. Everything I Am, great song. Homecoming with Chris Martin, following up on that Adam Levine feature.
I was thinking to say, I'm like, both of these songs in the same vein should not work.
Absolutely they do. Not. Yeah, they really do. And then the autobiographical Big Brother is a great tune. So, I mean, what more can you ask for? There's meaningful songs, there's funny ones, there's fun ones, there's some bangers, like club kind of bling era bangers. It's just a great project, the best of the bling era by a mile. I won't take any shit on that. What was better? And it really competes with number 1. I think if you took Drunken Hot Girls off there, it might be my number 1, but that song's so bad, it knocks it down to number 2.
It's fair. All right, my number 1 is My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. To me, this is the landmark Kanye record. Okay, he does his R&B, 808s and Heartbreak, and he goes, I'll come back to rap, and he does a rap album. And Dark Fantasy, you might think you beat the scene, And the entire, beginning part of that, and then the chorus in the background, can we get much higher? It feels so epic. It feels like there's just a fullness to it. I love it so much. You have Power, which is a banger, which is one of his most well-known tracks for a reason, with, as you said, the King Crimson sample in it. You have Monster, which is a completely absurd track. I mean, it's got Rick Ross is great in it. Kanye West is great in it. Jay-Z is terrible in it. He's awful. Goblin Ghoul. You ever heard? Notice I said Ghoul. I hate that. We're gonna make a song called Monster. All right, I'm just gonna name all the monsters I've ever heard of in my life. It's like Godzilla, King Kong, Loch Ness. It's like, all right. I mean, you could talk about something else, Jim. No, I got it. And then this is maybe the best thing Nicki Minaj has ever put to recording. Her feature in Monster is absolutely fucking fire. It's amazing. She's so good in it. She owns the entire song. That song's hers now. She's like, you know what? I know it's a Kanye album. That's my song now. I think Runaway is an amazing track. I love even the ending part after all of it. Well, first off, you have the piano, the ding, ding, and then it bumps in. It goes into this huge piece of music. And then at the end, Mike D just fucks with Kanye's voice with all the distortion in it. You have So Appalled, fucking ridiculous. I mean, I love it. I think that song's hilarious. I don't think it's one of the stronger cuts, but I still like it a lot. Devil in a New Dress. I like the Rick Ross feature. I like the slow downness of it. I think it's a really nice track in the middle of everything.
So she was mixed properly.
That's fair. And then the only song I really can't stand is Blame Game. The Chris Rock part is so uncomfortable to listen to. You listen to it once and you never have to listen to it again. You're like, it's tattooed in your brain how uncomfortable it makes you. You're like, it makes me cringe inside of myself. Yeezy taught me. Who reupholstered? Yeezy reupholstered. Ew. Like, ew. What the hell?
That's gross.
But Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, outside of that song, is a masterpiece. Yes, is it top heavy? Are the songs at the beginning of the record way better than the ones at the end?
Did you say Chris Rock said Yeezy taught me?
Yeah, he's the Yeezy taught me guy.
Oh, I thought that was a woman.
The Yeezy taught me is a woman, but the guy who keeps asking all the questions.
Oh, okay. I was like, he did that voice too. That's weird as hell.
No, he's just in it, and I mean, it's the ending tracks after Runaway and Devil in a New Dress are a little bit weaker than the beginning, but the only one that stands out as shitty is Blame Game. The rest of them are good, not great. But the beginning is so fantastic, you can't look past it. It's one of the better albums of the decade, in my mind. It's not the best album of the decade, but it's one of his top 10, definitely, easily.
Yeah, I mean, I've already given my opinion on that one. Great record, hard to argue. I mean, but again, my number one is The College Dropout from 2004, one that I didn't expect to name as number one, but I just can't get away from how good this album is. Up to before we made this list, I only own Graduation on vinyl. I'm gonna pick up The College Dropout now after this, going back and revisiting all these to make this list. And the biggest mark in its favor is it's the one album I can't think of another album where I don't hate the skits that are on it.
Right.
They're all so bad so often on most of these projects. They aren't here. They work perfectly. There's the right amount of them. They're not too long. They're not indulgent to the point where they're so, just,
they have something to say.
Yeah, they fit with the concept of the record. And it almost can be called a concept record, really. I mean, yeah, how nostalgic are you when that Lauryn Hill sample on All Falls Down come in? I wasn't even old enough to be paying attention to music, but it makes me nostalgic. The acoustic instrumentation, the fact that he has coherent political messages in his lyrics, some nice flows from a young, ambitious, something to prove Kanye, fantastic. Spaceship is a great example of how good he is at using that style of production that so many people would copy, using those old soul samples, speeding them up, slowing them down. Jesus Walks, cold as hell, one of his better tracks overall.
It's a banger. It's such a banger.
Never Let Me Down is super strong. That Jay Ivy verse, I don't know that much about Jay Ivy other than his name, but a super strong verse on that's awesome. Family Business.
Family Business was the one at the end of the album I did not get to mention.
Oh, yeah, that's great. I thought you were going to say you didn't like it.
No, All That Glitters is not gold. I forgot to, like when I said there are others, I meant Family Business. Yeah. That record, that track is great.
It's fantastic. Slower, more somber, more lyrical.
I really like it.
that 3-track school spirit thing, I think is really, really funny, and it works, and it's a good little bit there. I actually do like the new workout plan. I think it's goofy and irreverent and funny, and I think it works. It's almost like a skit in song form. So you could trim some fat, to be fair. The Ludacris feature, get him off this fucking thing.
Ludacris and Lil Wayne, man, stop putting them in stuff.
Yeah, those guys should not have careers. And this would have been such a breath of fresh air, given the fact that you had Ludacris, you had Lil Wayne, you had 50 Cent, you had fucking Nelly. You remember Nelly?
Yeah.
Batter up! Fuck Nelly. He's
God.
Terrible. And all those guys are awful, and they have no legacy. And they appear, Ludacris appears on this thing, and it's the worst part. But this would have blown all those guys out of the water as far as somebody that was funny, clever, great production. I mean, this is a super, super strong
interesting.
project.
It was just interesting. It was something different.
And I can't rank his best of the decade without talking about this album, man. Because it was 2004. It was that decade.
Yeah.
I think it's stronger than Beautiful Twisted Fantasy, in my opinion. Even though I love all three of them. But
Beautiful Twisted Fantasy was 11, though. You're good.
2011?
Yeah.
I thought it was 2010. Oh, was it?
Oh, wait. If it was 2010, we're not counting that as the same decade?
Okay, well, there was no year zero, right?
Okay, fine.
So a decade.
You're
We're still in the. Okay, don't get me started on that.
You're one of those.
There wasn't a year zero. If a decade is 10 years long, you don't start from year zero because it didn't exist. You start from year 1 and it goes to year 11. Anyway, we'll gloss over that regardless. Yeah, just a fantastic record. One that I always remember liking, but I didn't revisit it too much until I sat down to make this list, and I was like, man, this blows me away how good this is. And it's my vote for the best Kanye West album among many great ones.
Yeah, so that's our list on the eccentric billionaire, the shoe guy, the bless you, the eccentric billionaire, the shoe guy,
fashion icon,
soon to be divorced from Kim Kardashian, father of a daughter who's named after a direction. I mean, he's great. There's something about this guy who he's just ridiculous. He's fantastic.
I did not expect to enjoy listening through this discography again as much as I did, even though there are ones I knew I liked. Really, there's only a couple bad spots in this discography that you can skip over. And a lot of the collaborative stuff is great. Notably, Kids See Ghosts probably would be my number one if it was.
It would be definitely up there for me. I don't know if it would be better than Dark Twisted Fantasy. I find that to be. I am so dead set on that record being it's my favorite of his. It's been my favorite of his for years now. And I knew it would be number one when we came into this. I was so sure. It was really a matter of what would come after it. And I was surprised Graduation was as high as it was, and Late Registration was as low as it was, because those are the two that I was shocked by, because everybody seemed to love those loved Late Registration and think Graduation was not as good as those ones. I like the production better, honestly.
Mm-hmm. So there you go. Really, I think he's sold a bit short artistically because of all the nonsense he gets himself into on social media and the stupid Trump thing they had for a while.
Then again, would he be Kanye without the nonsense?
That's the thing.
Probably not.
He's definitely unique, and he is a personality that just doesn't quit. Even when he's not making music, he never leaves the spotlight.
In a fucked up way. He's so conscious of what he's doing. Like, the lyrics are so mindful. They're so very aware. And you wouldn't think that of a guy that does all the stupid, crazy bullshit that he does. The lyrics are so smart. They really are.
He is the epitome of celebrity, I would say, of this century. You know what I mean? He is the definition of a 21st century celebrity in every way, politically, personally. People hound Kanye in his personal life in a way that almost nobody else gets scrutinized and talked about and analyzed. And it's just, but some great music. I mean, I don't think his fame is unjustified. I think the strength is there in his discography.
Right. If he wasn't talented, then it wouldn't be worth talking about. But I'd say he's if it was not for Kendrick, I would say he's arguably the most talented rapper of this century. Yeah. He's definitely up there.
He's definitely up there and worthy of the fame that he has garnered. And he reinvents himself frequently, even though it didn't work with Jesus is King. I love the fact that he's 40-something now, and he's still pushing boundaries, trying new sounds. He's an artist. He's fundamentally an artist, and a good one.
You never like staying in the same place. I mean, you see so many careers stagnate. I mean, I think that's why he's had the longevity of quality records, is because he's trying new things and doing it the correct way. He's doing it right. He's not just going, oh, I want to wake up and do this one day, and he does it. Yeah. I mean, look, do I care for Jesus as an industrial hip hop record? Maybe not, but I appreciate that A, he gave it a shot, and B, probably did it better than most rappers in his position would do. You think Jay-Z would do a quality industrial hip hop record?
No.
Absolutely not.
Because he doesn't have the ability.
No.
Whereas Kanye, even when he's doing something that he isn't the best at, his ability carries him to the fact that it's never going to be a terrible project.
No.
You know what I mean? So there you go. And I think it's your pick now, Mike.
And I think we are going to go with one of my favorite groups, a lot less mainstream than we've been going with. We are going to go with Death Grips. And we are including the mixtape ex-military will be in there. We're saying it now. It's happening.
At Mike's insistence, despite my firm rules about keeping only studio albums on this list, we are including ex-military.
We are including ex-military.
Fine. All right.
All right.
I'm excited. There's several of those that I haven't heard as well. So I'm excited. Stay tuned for that. Thanks for watching.